Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, good friends, administrators, teachers, educators. I'm so excited. Welcome to Webinar Wednesdays, brought to you by Acadasia. I'm happy to be here with you again. It's been a while. I am Roy Platon, co-founder and chief community officer for Acadasia based out of Singapore. We are a mission-driven edtech business, and we are here to empower educators everywhere. I've missed you all. Wherever you are today, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and good day to all of you from all the countries that are participating, all our beloved educators and members from Philippines. We have our friends in the chat. We also have friends from Indonesia, and we have a couple from Singapore here. Hello again, everybody. Super excited to be with you. We took a bit of a break from our usual webinar Wednesdays, as you probably had known from your emails. Hopefully, you got our announcements, because basically there's been a huge change at Acadasia, and I'll share my screen so that I can show you a bit more. So we've basically rebranded a little bit, and now we're introducing the all-new Acadasia website. Okay, so we are now called Acadasia, and this is our new login page. Okay, so if you come and visit, if you don't have an account yet, please visit Acadasia. You can log in here. If you have not created an account yet, you can sign up. Just be sure to select the teacher option when you sign up here, and then fill up your username, email address, and password. If you already have your existing account from our previous platform, you can just try logging into Acadasia using your existing account, not a problem. And then if you're not able to log in, just click on Forgot Password and reset your password again. Once you reset your password, you should get it at the same email address that you used from your previous account. Change your password successfully, and then you'll be logging in to access your Acadasia account. Okay, and then if you have any questions further, you can email us at support@acadasia.com, and we can further assist you. But what I'm super excited about is with this new website, it's an all new look and feel, and I'll show you a little bit more of this after. And we have a completely new look, and I'll show you why we are super excited for our new site towards the end of the program. I'll walk you through it really quickly. But for today, what we're going to do is basically have our regular webinar Wednesdays. And I'm very excited to introduce our next speakers and our topic. Today, we'll be talking about appreciative inquiry. And this is a very important topic because what we want to do is, again, continue our lifelong learning mindset journey and journey towards upskilling ourselves, right? So as we advocate every time here at Acadasia as educators, it's been quite a crazy time these past 2.5 years adjusting to the new ways of teaching and learning. And we've been with you, for those of you who have joined our training programs, we've been with you every step of the way in terms of upskilling, using hybrid learning tools, using more tech tools, engaging your students. And this is part of our continuing professional development and our upskilling towards becoming better educators. And appreciative inquiry is a very important topic because it helps us to adjust our mindset in terms of a framework where we're asking the right questions and trying to find out, what is really the root cause of things and how to come up with positive approaches and solutions towards those when we face our challenges, even as probably a lot of us are going back to face-to-face. Some of us are going back and meeting our students again face-to-face for the first time. Some of us are probably trying to work out even a hybrid approach where some of it is face-to-face, some of it is online, and any other combination, even printed modules, right? So it's the good thing is we're trying to get back into the flow of things, but we're also adapting and incorporating the new tools and techniques that we've learned, right? And it's important to ask the right questions. It's important to apply appreciative inquiry as we're coming into this transition. So that's what our topic will be for today. And I'll introduce now our speakers who'll be joining us on our fireside chat. Again, as before, sit back, relax. I hope you're taking a short break from your busy day today. Get your coffee or tea for our friends in the Philippines. Get your snacks ready. Usually, this is what we call merienda time or snack time, coffee breaks. And we'll have a nice, interesting discussion for you about appreciative inquiry for today. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our two panelists for today. First, from the Philippines, he is the Director of Learning and Development at Strave, formerly known as SPI Global, a multi award winning leader in delivering technology driven solutions for content and data to leading global organizations. He has 26 years of cumulative experience as a designer and implementer of continuing education programs. Currently, he is responsible for the overall execution of leadership development programs across his company. And prior to this, he had worked with various business process outsourcing companies where he's able to hone his skills in module development, facilitation, program management, and organizational design. He's a graduate of AV Philosophy and Letters from San Beda College in the Philippines, and he's also certified interaction management facilitator of DDI. And I'm very proud to introduce my friend, Director for Learning Development at Strave, Mr. William Billy Suarez. Billy.
Thank you, Roy, for that introduction. It's actually good to be here. It's nice. It's also nice to actually partner with you, and of course to interact with those that are actually watching on StreamYard. Of course, there are a lot of things that we could actually share, aside from me and another speaker, which we'll introduce in a few minutes. Again, just for the people to understand, Strive is like what Roy actually mentioned. Used to be known as SPI Global. We've been around in the business for about 40 years or so in the Philippines. We're technically the oldest BPO. But we also do provide services, data solutions, e-learning solutions to K to 12 K to 12 education. So we provide a lot of the things that you use, let's say books, well-known ones. I'm not allowed to say which ones those are actually used by a lot of our schools. So most of those works done by authors are edited in the Philippines, eventually published elsewhere, and then provided to the schools. So I look forward to sharing some of the things I know about appreciative inquiry with you in the entire discussion for today.
Thanks a lot, Billy. Again, great to have you and looking forward to working with your company and with Akadasia, supporting educators as you have been these past years. So thank you, Billy, for joining us today. Our next speaker hails from India, and she had obtained her doctorate in education psychology and certification, GCC UCLA certification for career consulting, and is also a UK certified life coach. Her 25 years of experience merges the carrefour of education, psychology, mathematics, and career guidance. She found her calling in social entrepreneurship, and she is a believer in multi-potentialities as she mentors her clients across all ages to reach their optimum potential with a focus on business and digital skills. Her most recent laurels include the Business Leader Award 2021 Under 50 in Skills Augmentation category by Business Mint, the 111 Power Women Award 2021 by Lead India Foundation. She's also a global juror to represent India in the SDG 9 and Women Achievers Award by the Indian Women Convention for dedicated work in social awareness campaigns for women empowerment. Uh, among the many hats she wears, she's the founder of Basque Ekrai Charitable Society. I hope I said that right. Just correct me later. She's also the director of Skills Reform Private Limited and the director of the Association of Indian Principals. Without further ado, I'm happy to introduce Dr. Chandra Sabharwal. Chetna, glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you, Roy, and thank you, Billy. And I believe that this fireside chat is going to be very exciting for all those who have joined from all over the world, and I'm looking forward to be part of it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Chetna, again for joining us. So our topic again is very interesting. We talked about appreciative inquiry, right? So it's about how to appreciate the way we ask. I guess that's probably a way to simplify that discussion, and that is a very well discussed topic in professional development, personal development circles, as well as in education. What would be interesting here is to get your perspectives, not just from an education perspective, but even a corporate or business perspective. That will be very helpful for our audience today. So if we look at the topic again, so if we say, let's say, if we talk about appreciative inquiry, so we're talking about the most important aspects of why we need to adapt this kind of mindset. How can we help educators learn to use appreciative inquiry, not just as individuals, but as organizations, to design and craft actions and directions around a shared strategic vision? How valuing and creating and how inquiry and change can be viewed as one process, powerfully related and understood as an integral whole, leading towards common ground and innovation, right? So I think there's some challenges that we're facing, especially as we transition more back to a hybrid style of learning, as we come back face to face with our students who are probably also, trying to readjust once more. They come back to the classroom if they can, and how to, continue their learning given the times that we have, right? So I'll start off maybe, and any one of you can start off the discussion. I want to start with how you define appreciative inquiry in your own words. I mean, how do you perceive appreciative inquiry? What is that all about?
Chetna, would you like to go ahead?
Okay, I'll do that. So, appreciative inquiry, I think what best defines it is we all, I mean, as human beings, we all have seen, we start our day or kind of we start our day with a no or something every time. Okay, even if you're telling a child, don't do this, don't do this, don't do that, right? Now this is where, so the negativity or the kind of the deficit of the words which we have in our vocabulary is something we have forgotten to appreciate others. We have forgotten, though during COVID it happened a lot. But I feel it is all AI is about changing attitudes and behaviors and practices through the conversation. The first thing has to be the conversation which has to be started, that how we are going to talk about, be it an individual, be it an organization. And usually, like Billy comes from the corporate experience, so that's what we feel, that this cannot be, the organization can transform only in the corporate, or maybe they are the customer centric, but why not student centric also? Why don't we start with the students, and right from the childhood we are beginning with that? So I feel, and then for me as an educationist, I feel I can draw a lot of commonalities between appreciative inquiry and positive psychology. Okay, for instance, the three pillars of positive psychology are positive experiences, positive individual traits, and positive institutions, right? And to do this in order, then we set up people to imagine their highest hopes and possibilities. For me, AI would be the starting of the conversation from the beginning, um, putting strength on strength. That is what I would say, like talking about the strength of an individual, of an organization. So that's what I feel, and we will have more chat on based on what we are going to discover later. So over to you, Billy, for this.
Thanks, Chetna. That's very interesting. Billy, how do you perceive or define appreciative inquiry?
When you raised the topic the first time, what first came to mind is a couple of perhaps some sayings we've heard in the past. Let's say, is the glass half full or is it half empty? Is it do you have an abundance mentality or a scarcity mentality? Or where do we actually focus on? Do we focus on what went wrong or what went well, right? So these are some questions that we normally look into when we talk of appreciative inquiry. I look at it as some would say it's a process, but I look at it as a way of life. We always have to start, similar to what Chet actually mentioned. It's how you start your day. If you start your day with negativity, everything else, the universe will actually come back to you and provide you everything that's negative in the world. But however, if you start your day with something more positive and see through what can I actually do today to focus on the things I need to work on from an organizational perspective or from an academic perspective, they will be able to find the solutions that actually work best for us. In fact, I I normally look at we could look at appreciative inquiry in two terms, right? And the the meaning of it and the beauty of AI lies actually in those two words: appreciate, which really is how do you value and recognize the best in people, and of course inquire. How do you inquire further by asking the right questions? No? So at the heart of it is really when you look at AI, at the heart of it is that how do you look at the strengths of individuals? Some of you may have read through, let's say, Strengths Finders by the Gallup organization, or perhaps you've read the Start with Why, which is from Simon Sinek, which also focuses a lot on the behavioral aspect of why do we need to do things the way we do things, right? So it is a way for us also to be able to engage with people, because we normally engage people who, let's say, when we reach out and ask for what went well, people tend to answer more and perhaps share more rather than be, let's say, when you ask somebody what happened, it seems to be to connote a little bit of negativity. Of course, we'll expand that a little bit more later on.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Billy. So, Chetna, I like what you were saying a while ago about the positive psychology angle of it. So, you're mentioning about positive experiences, positive individual, and positive organizations. And, that is a way very similar to AI or appreciative inquiry that having a more positive outlook. And to Billy's point, depending on how you wake up in the morning and what you value, if you have a not so positive mindset, things you're only seeing the not so good things about a particular situation or activity, then appreciative inquiry helps you find out more what positive things you can value and how to ask the right questions about it. So great start, and that's how we can define appreciative inquiry. So moving on, I guess, with our discussion now is, sometimes, as Billy was mentioning about, finding your strengths or your why, how can this AI or appreciative inquiry help educators ask themselves to explore their own strengths or weaknesses, to I guess see and really take inventory or take stock of their failures and their successes as they already exist, in the present, in their own schools, perhaps in their situation, in their workplace? And can this be used to engage students and educators towards a more personal and organizational strategic vision? Because I think we were saying, to Chetna's point, you were saying that there has to be a positive experience or something positive you're aiming for. But then, how do we kind of look at our strengths and weaknesses, failures and successes as they are now, and use that to have students and educators actually build a vision for themselves?
Okay, so you want me to take that first? Yeah?
Oh,
Okay.
sure, please go ahead.
So your first part of the question is that how we can engage students, right? So if you would see that starting from, so it could be a top down approach or bottoms up approach from the organization point of view. I feel the best thing would be when we do SWOT analysis. I think it's a part of OBE for all of us when we do in the organization and all, and it is a tendency for all of us as a human being. Okay, when I give, and I've done this exercise with a lot of my students also, and the teachers also, and the leaders as well. So when we do a SWOT analysis, so we don't do any, I mean, we are not giving them a prescriptive analysis for that. They just do it, and then we leave it there, right? So, and you would automatically see each one of us, including me as well, we will always focus on the two parts of it, which is weaknesses and threats. That is what, so that's where we have to change the mindset about it. And if we start this very early in the education system, and I'm talking about all the stakeholders, right from students, parents, the teachers, the leaders also, and the community as well. So when we start this, so SWOT analysis is a perfect way of doing the inquiry, of course, but then how do we appreciate that? How do we find about that if I have these strengths and I can begin from here to the new journey of mine? So if you would go into an organization and if the leader is asking these questions to the people around, that, okay, what is, maybe occasionally, maybe in a very informal way, that, okay, you tell me what are your strengths, right? And that's what. And or maybe you can ask, and this is the conversation which can happen day to day basis, when if you're entering into the your boss's room or the leader's room, and he asks you, suddenly puts you in a situation that, okay, tell me what are the five strengths of my organization or our organization. And that's where the conversation starts. So it can be in the classroom, it can be in the boardroom, it can be into the meetings also, it can be into the education summit as well. That's what I feel. The way you are, the questions which are intended for people to answer, and that's where your thinking will change, that's where your mindset changes, that's where you start focusing more on your strengths and your capabilities, your potential for that matter. And that's what, if you would see why I mentioned multi potentialities, because each one of us have not just one way of being successful. It could be even a small, even a, I mean, negligent person, ignorant person, somewhere in this world, who's doing his bit for the society, for the community. And that's what we have to learn how to appreciate and how to bring them, learn from their experiences, and then bring them into the board rooms also. So just to give one example, and then I'll finish. I think it is one of the organization who did that with 72,000 people of their, I mean, employees, who actually formulated the vision of that company. That's what. So if you're including everyone, and that is what appreciative inquiry, that, okay, what do you want to achieve? What do you want to learn? What do you want to um, turn into customer centric or student centric? So that's where. So once it starts from the bottom, I think we have a good way to go, and we have a long way to go, and we can look for the possibilities. Who would have imagined starting from the pages to sitting here on StreamYard and discussing about appreciative inquiry? So the possibility, the hope, and I feel the limitless is what AI is about. So that's what from my side.
Thank you, Chetna. Very interesting. Maybe I'll try to unpack it a little bit, because I know I probably asked a quite a broad question now that I think about it. So let me try to kind of you know make it more manageable into bite-sized pieces, right? So you mentioned in your example, you're talking about, let's say, a huge organization, 72,000 people, and basically they were included in the SWOT analysis and the vision building of the organization. So I guess for our audience, when we say SWOT, that is a tool or a framework technique that is used to evaluate your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Okay, so perhaps, hopefully, our dear educators, you've heard of this before, especially our business teachers there in the audience. Please share that with your colleagues. All right, so that framework allows the participants, the stakeholders, whether you want to do it student bottom up or teacher bottom up or top down, let's say the management or the owners of the school. SWOT is one of those frameworks you can use to really look at the opportunities, threats, strengths, and weaknesses. And from there, having identified that, is, then try to imagine, oh, then where do we want to be, right? And that is how we use AI appreciative inquiry, because we can't appreciate it if we're not, kind of identifying or naming these strengths and challenges, right? So I think um, it's possible, and there are ways to do it. As Chetna mentioned, you can do it top down, but as in her example, it probably is more effective. It's also from bottom up. So, our participants here, don't think that just because you're a teacher and let's say you're only doing your classroom, that you cannot contribute to this vision, that you cannot contribute to the appreciative inquiry exercise. I think, in fact, your contributions and your input are very important, because you are on the ground. You are the ones teaching the students, experiencing the challenges that they have, and you can really contribute to, asking the right questions so that you can come up with a shared vision. Just before I get Billy's comment, I also noticed that there's some questions in the chat regarding any attendance or link for attendance. So towards the end of the session, we'll have a question and answer. So don't forget to post your comments and questions through our Mentimeter link that we're sharing. We'll have a Q&A with the speakers towards the end of the session. Also, towards the end, there'll be an exit survey link that will be provided. So make sure that you answer the exit survey. And that is available when you sign up on the Acadasia website for the course. There's an accompanying course with this session. You have to go through the online course, fill up the exit survey and evaluation form there, and that will serve as your attendance. Okay, so that is how you get the attendance for this session today. You have to create your Akadasia account. Okay, so Billy, there's a lot to unpack. We can take it piece by piecemeal. Okay, so strengths and weaknesses of individuals and organizations, top or bottom down approach, and how can AI or appreciative inquiry help in developing a strategic vision?
Sure. Let's deconstruct that one, right, a little bit.
Yeah.
In fact, I like the sample that Chetnag actually gave. Reminds me of a company we both actually worked with in the past. We're in that company now. I think it's more than 175 years in the Philippines, right? And at one point, they actually involve all of their employees to create the vision of the organization, including the core values. That's why it actually stands the best of time. So for those of you who are here, and there are multiple stories about organizations that actually use their employee base to create value systems. You might want to read, and perhaps Roy can actually share that. Built to Last. It's an old, very a book written in the 80s about organizations in the US and how they stood the test of time. And you'd notice that it was because of the values and the visions that are created together with the employees of the organization, right? But let's go back to so what do we actually really need, right? So I just have a few notes written down. One is something like what Chetna mentioned. It's basically a change in mindset, right? Because our brains are technically hardwired to think with a negativity bias, and that's actually based on studies. We are predisposed to spot things that are not going well, right? We often look into, instead of what can we do well, instead of most often we think of what happened, which negates the thought actually. And the way you answer that question is always towards the negative side. It's something instinctual to us that we want to fix, right? And that's precisely the reason why we need to be able to change that mind, especially now. I mean, 2 years in a lockdown period, especially for educators, we're constantly thinking about. Remember when COVID started, we went into a solution-based approach, right, or a problem-based approach first. Meaning, what can we do? We don't have the resources. We started thinking of the problem, and only a couple of months after do we actually now come up with the solutions, as opposed to, right? And we saw this from a corporate setting. We also had the same problem, right? Especially for facilitators or, let's say, coaches. How do you facilitate training online, right? You also need to be able to look at it from a culture perspective. A lot of Asians don't like to talk about positivity. They rather talk about and fix problems, right? When you talk of, let's say, solutioning, you always look at the problem first, when in fact you can always look at what do we have now and what's working, right? So we need to be able to be role models at the same time for us to be able to focus on a strengths-based approach. It's easier said than done, really, because constantly it's a mindset that we have. We want to solve problems. There's nothing bad about solving problems. In fact, that's what we do every day as educators, as teachers. I used to teach before. Back for about 2 or 3 years, I taught literature, creative writing, which I enjoyed a lot. And coming from a corporate setting, I wanted to bring that appreciative inquiry side into a academic setting, because in a corporate setting, we teach them things like appreciative inquiry, problem solving, decision making, coaching, mentoring, behavior skills training, because we have to employees need to unlearn things they've learned or may perhaps not learned, and start changing their perception, changing their behavior, so that they see things differently, right? But what if we can bring this, the way we facilitate training, the way we teach our employees, back to the university or the academy or college, or even all the way down? I mean, when you look at, let's say, elementary, high school, we often look at it as nurturing years, right? Finally, when you go to, let's say, the college, university, the nurturing side is we lose track of the nurturing side. But we need to change the mindset in a way that, to perhaps I'll go to that. Can this be used, right, to engage students? Definitely, because as teachers and educators, we also play the role of coaches, right? We're coaches to our students. In fact, they're family, right? So when you look at your students, when you look at them as family, you'll treat them as somebody that's part of you, right? And as coaches, you need to be able to ask the right questions that will draw out the right responses. All right. Part of that one, of course, you have to look at change also a little bit, some culture changes along the way, right? When somebody asks you, perhaps some of the one key exercise you normally ask, right, is let's say I am statements. It's very difficult for us to actually answer I am statements, especially when it's positive, because we feel like we're bragging. It's not actually about bragging, it's talking about your strengths, right? So let's say in a class, whether you're inside a classroom, whether you're teaching literature, whether you're teaching English, math, science, etc. And when students, let's say, make mistakes constantly, we ask, so what was wrong in that equation? What was wrong in that sentence? Or perhaps we could change the mindset of instead saying, what do you think went well in that conversation? What do you think went well in that interaction? Right? And then follow it out by, again, looking at opportunities instead of, let's say, what went wrong. What would you do differently? Meaning, if I answer that question, then I'll be able to start thinking of a solution myself because I'm part of the equation. And that's something that we need to bring from an organizational perspective back to schools. Because we used to have that. I mean, 8 years ago, I could talk about this for hours, right? Years ago, perhaps 20 years ago, the educational system was different, right? Regardless whether you're from primary all the way to your tertiary, to your college, university degrees, we cared more. Now it's more of providing the information, and then of course we want them to be independent. But independence doesn't mean that you cannot be dependent. Also, that's why for some of you who've read Seven Habits, ultimately our goal is to be interdependent, right? There's still some form of independency and some form of dependency, and that's where appreciative inquiry becomes more dynamic. It's not a process like I mentioned earlier. It's more of a way of life, of doing things. So I'll pause there for now.
Okay. Thanks, Billy. Yeah, again, it's a big question to unpack. What I kind of took away from that is, as you said, you know, appreciative inquiry is more a mindset, a way of thinking. So it's very challenging, as you said, to ask the I am statement, right? Because when you ask a question like that, whether using SWOT analysis or I am statement, it's just tools to the same end. Is where are we now? What is happening currently, and can I appreciate both the good and the bad of where I am now, and how does that affect me as a person, my students, and the organization? And if this is where I am now, where do I want to go? Who do I want to be? Who do I want my students to be? Right? And for our good audience here, you can localize that. You can apply that to your own particular situations, because you might have some schools who are a bit more open-minded and progressive, and getting them more involved in creating a space to ask those questions and creating programs towards some real innovation, while others maybe still need to self-discover. They still need some time to kind of really take a step back and really ask those questions. So wherever you are in that situation, I hope all of you are watching today are taking stock of where you are, and try to see how you can use appreciative inquiry to see is there a way to do things better given where we are. All right. Yeah, very interesting. I appreciate all the comments. I see our friends from General Santos City, from Cagayan in the Philippines. You also have a lot of people from, I saw some people, I think you have some fans in the audience, Chetna, from India as well. People are saying hi and hello to you, as well as former colleagues, Billy from the Philippines, also saying hi and hello to you as well. Um, moving on to our next, question from this, right? And I think we talked about the school setting a lot already. So let me kind of, adjust the lens on this a little bit more. Is if we're looking at ourselves and our students and the organizations we're a part of, um, how can I use this? Let's say there's an activity that allows us to ask these questions and to inquire specifically, but there'll be a lot of things that'll be brought up, right? There's, each person or each department or each school will have different issues. They've tried to inquire and appreciate. So then, how what do they do with this gamut or this entire body of topics and concerns that they have, right? How do they then qualify all these things that they've inquired about, to pursue something that's really creating value, something that really develops and coaches leadership, and how to kind of redesign their organization in a way that, okay, we have a lot of issues, right? Then, but what do I do with these, and how do I move forward in addressing and innovating these issues?
Billy, you want me to take it first, or you would be?
So I'll go first this time. So I
Okay.
mean, again, let's look at it in a different way. Deconstruct it a little bit, Roy. That's also a very complex question,
Hmm.
uh, right? Uh, first thing, when you look at appreciative inquiry, doesn't mean that you won't look at your past, right? You won't look at your problems. It's still basically a problem solution approach, except that you come into with a positive mindset instead of trying
Hmm.
to find faults, right? Because tendency is that we try to find faults when we do problem solving. That's why we start with uh, strengths, weaknesses, right? Although we start with strengths, something positive. Others would actually use the reverse version of SWOT, which is TOES, right? Threats and opportunities, and then weaknesses and strengths.
Hmm.
So you notice
Hmm.
the mindset wherein you're coming from. What I mean, understanding what the competition is, or perhaps what the problem is within the organization, or let's say within the school or the academy. Right? It is not to dispel that fact because that we need to find as a foundation. And from there, focus on where you want to go. And I'll have to put into Sinek again into this question because he technically asked the right question. Why do we do what we do? Right? That's something that we need to be able to ask individually and also as a group of individuals because that defines who we are as an organization and as a group of individuals and then start backtracking, right? Defining what the instead of identifying the problem, you technically you you look into what actually works after you have actually seen what the concern is and how do you want to move forward. And basically, the 4Ds, right? The 4Ds of AI, which is discover, dream, design, and deliver without discounting the fact that there are problems that you need to raise. But when you actually, however, when you start thinking of the solutions based on that one, in terms of what you will do and how will it work, it will eventually solve those problems. Right? In the same way, I mean, you also ask what questions do we raise, right? Aside from what are your strengths, right? While it's a change in mindset, it's also I'll have to look at it. I mentioned it earlier. We need to become, let's say, coaches. We need to be able to ask the right questions that will draw out the right responses. And instead of asking what happened, which often leads to a person explaining what transpired negatively, we need to ask. And I consider in coaching, actually, two things I normally just ask: what went well, and then what else went well to draw out more information as that builds self-confidence which is a positive trait positive behavior that we require from AI, right? Followed by what would you do differently to look at the opportunities that you have, not minding that there are actually areas that you want to solve or areas that you want to improve on, but I want to look at what the other opportunities are. So what will I actually do differently and what else will I do differently? that I can, and of course, ultimately, as you as the coach, the teacher, the educator, will also, what support can I actually give you? Because you're not on in this road alone. We're on this road together. So the questions that encourage people to respond positively, and they are non-intrusive. It takes a while. It takes a lot of practice. It doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes I would still say that I actually fall into the trap of being intrusive, right? Because our emotions come into the play, right? And that's because we're also human beings. So in a school setting, so what do you do when you have all of this? Have all of the problems are here, let's say, and then have the opportunities. One quick way is basically ask, well, of course, not what do you want to do. Some organizations use post-it, post-its, right? Writing statements of where we want to go, what your vision is, what do we want to do, what what are we good at, what do we need to improve on? Change the questions to something more positive. When in fact,
Mm,
uh, what do we lack is negative, as opposed to
mm,
what can we improve on, right? So let's ask people to start asking, let's say, answering those questions, and just post it on the board. Eventually, work with the rest of the team to actually realign those answers so that you are able to compartmentalize and you'll be able to actually put in some structure. I mean, AI is not a creativity process, right? It's ultimately a way for you to start looking at it positively so that we end up coming up with a goal together as individuals or as a team. And then coming up with a structure so that we eventually have a way forward rather than just focusing and rather than just having too many ideas and not knowing where to go or what to do about it.
that's a great insight, Billy. What I learned from what you were saying, and that kind of opened my eyes to the appreciative inquiries. It's not necessarily, as you said, a process, but it's approaching at it from a more positive point of view. In fact, I want to mention Miss Mary Gill Orion in the YouTube chat. It's acknowledging positive ways rather than negative, and that is a nuance that you've helped me discover today. Because sure, we can ask all these questions. Sure, we can say, "Oh, what have we not done? What have we not been good at?" But appreciative inquiry is asking us to look at what the good that we've done, and then from that we share those positive observations with our colleagues, and then what more what even better things can we do from this good that we already can perceive. So that is a different way of approaching problem solving, not necessarily directly immediately, oh, solution based. Oh, are we sure that this is the problem, this is the only way to do it? No, let's look at it as you were saying. What good have we done? What are we doing well? We the 4Ds you mentioned: discover, dream, design, and deliver. Right. So we're discovering the positive and how to kind of enhance that. So that's what I learned from what you've shared. Um, Chetna, would you like to add to this?
Yes, so I think the appreciative inquiry model now is 5D, just to add one more
Oh,
D to that, which is the definition. Okay.
definition.
That yes, that talks about, so as Billy said, that it has to be it has to start from strengths, right? So what we want to focus on together. So let's say I'm just putting this into the educational setup because there are teachers who are joining us. So let's say we have, and depending on the socio-cultural context here, and also where the school is, where the institution is, okay, can we connect local artisans or local communities, and then the society and the parents, can we leverage their strengths? Okay, that's what we should do. So definition is basically leveraging the strengths of individuals, team, stakeholders, and the system. So it is something which is closer to, I would say, design thinking. So from somewhere between design thinking to system thinking, right? uh, it there comes appreciative inquiry, and then we come to discovery, as Billy said. So I'll just put it that it's asking questions to identify what are our existing strengths rather than putting focus on our weaknesses, and then positive processes already in place, which can be understood as organization positive core, the core of the organization, each one of us as an individual, as an institution, as a group of maybe teachers also, we do have that, the positive core. And that's where we have to start working. And that's what our discovery would be. Then coming to dreams, as he spoke about. So dreams would be that what do you want to achieve? Like, I know that this is my strength. Let's say I'm reasonably good public speaker. So from there, what can I do more about it? Can I be a little better coach when I'm talking to my audience there? And that's where you have to start. And then you start training yourself. And same thing can go. It can actually percolate down to the students, to the teachers, to the departments in the school, in the institution. And then there has to be something interwoven around, as because it is all about interconnectivity. So let's say we are doing something, we are talking a lot about sustainable development goals in every aspect of whether it is an organization, whether it is an institution or the university or the schools. Now, how we can come together with this 5D model of appreciative inquiry to leverage the strength of each one of this and balance it out for, let's say, starting from a small town anywhere in the world to the state and to the world, and maybe hopefully in the space also, as Tesla is doing for us. So, and that's a beautiful story which I would like to mention here, though it has nothing to do, I mean, not educational setup, but all of us have this Starbucks coffee, right? And you would see that after 50 years of their existence, how they have actually, through this appreciative inquiry, I would mention that, how they have been able to. There was a time when we were talking about that coffee beans would be extinct, right? So they have actually, from farmers to the consumer, I'm repeating it again, from the farmers, from the crop where we are getting from the Caribbean islands. So from there, how they have made it sustainable through the appreciative inquiry, including every stakeholder, is something which is to be watched out, and which is to be taken as an inspiration for all of us in appreciative inquiry. And then, yes, of course. So somebody has. There are questions. I think lesson planning and all. Yes, you can do that, and somewhere we can add a bit, like Billy said, the intended questions, the positive questions, right? And you can read about Socrates' art of questioning for that. I recommend that to every educator because that is my favorite, which I still use in mathematics when I'm taking training on that for teachers, how to ask those positive questions. So if, let's just to give one example, there was a student of mine who was actually very good in guitar, but not very good in mathematics. He did not like mathematics at all. So how I bring that together through the appreciative inquiry is that's what give you an insight into that, how you can do it in your classroom also. So I told him that, okay, is there any mathematics in guitar playing? And that's where his project started. So, and whatever strength you have, so see the rhythm, see the pattern, see the, can you create something out of it? And he came out with a beautiful composition, and today he's a good guitar player. So that's where appreciative inquiry starts. This, I hope this will give some inspiration and some insight into the model of how to go about it. So we don't have to go by the definitions, but we have to understand that how we are going to incorporate the essence of appreciative inquiry in our day-to-day work system. So that's what I have to say for that. Just to.
Thank you, Jetna. That's a lot. And I really like your example of um, applying appreciative inquiry to a music guitar student who doesn't like math. And the way the teacher can coach or guide that student is to find the positive, find the fun, find the good in math through something that they already like, right? And I think that approach is able to engage the student better. And in fact, you answered my question. This was one of the questions I was going to ask about how you can actually use this in the classroom. Looking at it from the broader perspective, you added this definition to the 5Ds. And I think the 5Ds, you can also find this in the course when you are dear educators, you sign up to Akadasia. That's included in the course, the 5Ds of appreciative inquiry. You also touched upon, the definition. Of course, we're trying to define these things, but you also touched upon design thinking, systems thinking. So I encourage those in the audience, please Google that or search that. What do you mean by design thinking and systems thinking, and how does appreciative inquiry contribute to that kind of thinking approach? That's your homework. We won't discuss it here, but I also like what you mentioned about interconnectivity. right? So whether it's as an educator, I'm trying to help my student see the positive and ask positively about their assignment so that they don't feel so negative about the work or homework you're giving them, to even the broader context. So you cited Starbucks an example. If I were to, let's say, illustrate an example of a elementary school or a high school in any part of the world, let's say they are in a rural part or community, have low internet connectivity, very difficult to do, online and hybrid learning. But let's say then if you apply appreciative inquiry to that school situation, what are they good at? What is the good coming out of that, rural school? One can say, let's say they have an amazing, let's say, vegetable garden at school. Let's say they had a student program where part of their activities is students are learning how to take care of, simple vegetables, herbs. They learn how to clean up, recycle the foodstuffs from lunch, and use that as composting from in their vegetable gardens at school, right? So let's say that is something positive about what the school does. Then appreciative inquiry asks, then how can we build on this? We probably are not the most technologically advanced school, but we're applying sustainability by our, how we live our daily lives at school. The lunch, let's say whatever leftovers you have, you create composting programs. The vegetables you grow at school, that is a great example of how do we build on this. Can we share this, let's say, as a gardening program to other schools or into the village or barangay that I'm in, right? So that is one way of approaching, I guess, what strengths your school has and using that, and maximizing that. Okay. Yeah, there are a bunch of questions now. There are a lot of questions in the chat, and I have some questions even from Neil, and I'll ask those a little bit later. We just have enough time to finish off our flow, and then I'll get to the questions from our audience as well. So, jumping off from that question, let me just look at my notes one moment. Um, I think we already answered, how this makes it different. Yeah, appreciative inquiry is different from other organizational change models or frameworks because we're asking it from a positive mindset as a start. Then I guess maybe just to wrap up our discussion before I go on to the to the questions asked by the audience. Um, if we look a bit broader, okay, we're looking at our appreciative inquiry for our students, appreciative inquiry for our school, but maybe from a shared vision of a future on a bigger perspective, right? So how can schools, no matter their situation, help contribute to a more global outlook and a more positive direction in terms of innovating what they're good at using this framework? How can these institutions and schools work together? Um, uh, let's say through a lot of institutions that are joining us today. We have individual schools and administrators joining us. How can they use appreciative inquiry to broaden their horizons and share a strategic vision with their other institutions using the appreciative inquiry framework?
Okay, so let me take that question because there are a lot of institution teachers, and so I would love to answer this question. So, what you have to do is a very simple task of identifying your strengths first, like what is your positive core, putting it on the forum like Akadasia or YouTube or anywhere, and try to connect, collaborate, and co-create together. That's what these three words have to be kind of internalized by the individuals, by the teachers, and by the school. So let's say, Roy, you talked about the sustainable the gardening thing, right? So we have done that during the COVID time. So because I'm also part of one of the global school alliances where we keep on discussing this. So there were certain schools which were not able to portray because of the internet connectivity how to connect with everybody, and so the community came together to give them the community radio, and that's where whole transaction of lessons started happening. And this community
Wow,
radio has
that's
become,
amazing.
Yes, so community radio has become very famous, and then they started connecting. So they are actually coaching them, teaching them how to become that. Because in India, of course, and I think in many parts of the world, that we still have the issue of the internet connectivity. So there's no dearth of the opportunities which can be, and that's where the whole discussion which we are having today comes to the positive core of the appreciative inquiry, that you leverage your strengths and then come together. So you can start with the students, give them the opportunity, give them the chance to speak about, and do this 5D model, this thing. So it can be into the classroom also. Let's say you are doing a problem in social sciences or mathematics, or even in English language, like creative writing. So let them put all the positive words together. Let them put, like, say, what appreciative inquiry actually talks about. So it is engaging, it is enriching, it is empowering, and then let them come about with the project. So when you give the chance, okay, to the students or to the stakeholders, even to, for that matter, we have worked through the organizations where people come for the school audit from other, like, say, other era of this, then they will bring all the framework for that. But why doing this, let's say, in quarterly basis, where every part, so take the feedback from the parents, take the feedback from the students, that what worked for all of us for this pandemic, let's say, and how we can leverage those trends to the next level. That is what. So planning for group of schools in specific geographic region is possibility, one possibility I can talk about. Then you can also strengthen partnership between schools. So we did one of the cultural virtual cultural exchange. Now this cultural exchange was about for the teenagers, because if I move from one country to the another country, I need to have some elements of cultural intelligence. Now, instead of telling them that, okay, you should not do this, instead, why not to have a very positive discussion that, okay, this is what this country communication skills are, or communication strategies are, or how do they communicate, and understanding their culture and appreciating. I think that's where appreciative inquiry plays a major role into that, when we talk about the collaborative, generative inclusion also. So going to the disability sector, of whether it is in India or anywhere in the school or in the organization. So that's where, if we start talking about the strengths of those people, is something that I feel this will bring us together. So a tool, it's a kind of a tool for positive change with individual schools, communities, organizations. How we use it, how often we use it. It could be a day to day. You start your classroom. So I used to do that. So just to get the grab attention of my classrooms, because the students would not be the same on every day, like we have 200 days of teaching. So I used to draw something on the whiteboard, and then I would stand quietly for a moment to just let them come to that, and then they will ask questions. Okay, they start discussing about it. So maybe giving them some positive words in the classroom, maybe starting the sustainable discussions about it, that, okay, how it has been, how what you can do about it and all. So that is where the discussions can be brought into. And yes, when we talked about, so the organization changing model, so yes, there could be. So we have already talked about that, but I wanted to put that here, the beautiful part of the Richard Thaler, which is the nudge theory, right?
Mm.
So this is the giving them a little nudge is something which will actually connect you with the appreciative inquiry, that, okay, if suppose there are students who feel little left out in the classroom, or even for the employees also, I feel there are some that who would be very vocal about their achievements and all, they can brag, but there are some who are the silent workers. So that's where we have to bridge this kind of with the asking them the intended questions, so that they know that they are valued, they are the core part of the team also. And that's where I feel this appreciative inquiry comes into a better play for all of us. So that's from my side.
That's fantastic, Chetna. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I agree. I mean, even for our educators here, Akadasia is a space for you to collaborate and discuss and share these, wonderful ideas. I'm reading in the chat already. It sounds like someone's already asking about, in Philippines, we have this concept called gulayan sa paaralan. If you translate that into English, that's really literally vegetable garden at school. So, okay, so already here, you can continue these discussions on Acadasia. Please, we love these kind of interactions to learn from each other. And Chetna, from what you're saying, the community radio, that's a great idea. I think in the DepEd, or Department of Education in the Philippines, there is a variation of radio, education radio for schools. And that is a way for people to connect despite the challenges. And again, overall, what you're saying, I like what you're saying about um, it's really a more positive approach, especially getting either students or employees who feel left out. If you're asking a more appreciative manner of how they are actually able to contribute, then they can get more involved. And I think the appreciative inquiry approach allows them a voice, allows them to really reach out and share the good that they are actually doing. And hopefully they're not silent anymore after that. Hopefully people can see and appreciate that these silent workers, these people, are really doing a lot of positive things in the background without us knowing it, that really contribute to a better culture at the school, better cultural sensitivity between countries and organizations. That's absolutely great insights from you, Chetna. Thank you for that. Billy, before I go to the questions, anything else you'd like to share?
Uh, I'd like to look at it, well, provide a different perspective also. As I mentioned, it's both a skill, a process, and it's a behavior that we are developing among students. So if you're part of a school that produces, let's say, engineers, let's say, the data architects, etc. So you involve everybody from a collegiate level of what you want to produce, right? And that's where your appreciative inquiry actually comes into play as a process. Of course,
Mm.
to produce those types of students, you also need to produce, imbibe with them certain qualities and behaviors. And that's what you build from them from their elementary to their secondary school years, right? And throughout all those years, because behaviors change over time, right? Even
Mm.
those that we think cannot change can actually change over time. By the time they hit your school, and of course, if they're, they're loyal to the school for all the way from elementary to college, right? Because we have those also in the Philippines. Then you produce a talent, right? We're in a talent that has the both the behavior and the skill and what you want to focus on, and then you partner now with organizations that has those let's say that focuses on those types of talent, right? If I produce, let's say, technology experts, and I'll partner with an organization that is focused on, let's say, technology or let's say data solutions. If I am, let's say, I produce a talent because they're good in business, then I partner with businesses that focuses on a diverse type of business, right? Because now it fits into now the type of let's say talent that they're looking into, whether it's by behavior and skill, right? And that's where, because the behavior part of AI is what we nurture out from the students. Like, let's say the example of Jet now, somebody, I don't like math either, that's why I took up AB philosophy and letters. There's no math in there, right? But here's the thing: if you're a teacher, how do you make somebody like math when in fact you need math the moment you start working? Why? Because I need to manage my finances, and that's purely
Mm.
basic math. So our task, let's say, the role of let's say your task as a teacher using AI as you teach subjects that students don't like: science, physics, geometry, algebra, so many levels, right? But how do you make them apply that in their day-to-day experience? That's your AI, because now
Mm.
you're changing their behavior and making them appreciate a simple subject that has a big impact in their lives. And then eventually, as they progress, they start using that one and see, and perhaps even I remember you telling them about it. Reminds me of, and perhaps they can, the audience can also search for this on the website. Clint Oliver. He's actually a motivational speaker and a drummer at the same time. So that's Clint Pulver, is Pulver. During his younger years, uh, people always thought that he was ADHD because he likes to move around, right?
Mm.
And then one teacher saw in him something else, right? So that at one of the conversations, I think you're a drummer, and handed him a piece, a pair of drumsticks. And all throughout, from elementary, high school to college, university, he actually supported himself using the drumsticks, right? only because of the teacher who saw something positive from the child. And that's technically the role and let's say the responsibility of everybody else in the organization, whether it's academic or corporate, is always to see what others cannot actually see from an individual person.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Billy. I like that example a lot because, appreciative inquiry is one of the skills educators really need. Because whether you're teaching, grade 9 math, as one of our audience members is here, or you go to tertiary where you have students who are more independent, including that even implicitly in how you teach your subjects has a huge effect on how students can enhance their own self-esteem and see that rather than seeing maybe their different learning styles or different approaches as a weakness, you see that as what you're really good at and maximize that, lean into it, as they said, and really see that then this is really something I can contribute positively to my immediate family and friends, to my immediate classmates and school, to society at large. And that really is the approach that appreciative inquiry allows us to take on. Absolutely fantastic there. Okay, we have very limited time now. I'll just go through some of the interesting questions from the audience before I ask the speakers for their final thoughts. I'll try to group some of the questions here. Okay, there's something interesting here about, I guess, the mechanics of AI or appreciative inquiry. Um, they're asking here, are there specific words that can be used to send the message of AI or appreciative inquiry? Are there specific words that can be used? Or um, how do we encourage the change using this appreciative inquiry? Or how do we integrate that into lesson planning? I guess that's the group of questions. If there is such a way to do so, or probably not. Any thoughts you would have on specific language to be used towards AI?
Okay, Billy, would you like to take that, or shall I? Or do I have the permission to do that?
Yeah, you can actually go ahead, Chetna.
Okay.
We might actually have the same answers on
Yes,
that
of
note.
course, as creators, as teachers. So yes, there would be specific words, and I would just tell you that what you can do with the specific words would be the collaboration, the positive core of your classroom. So there are always positive culture classrooms also. So you can have a discussion about it. So the few words which comes to my mind is the hope, possibility, and dream. Okay, so that's what you should do. And then of course the strengths, leveraging on the strengths is something which people can do on the AI. Because, and do not forget what actually appreciative inquiry means. It's about discovery of the best of being. Appreciation means that okay, you are complimenting someone. So just for all of you, all those who are, and I can see the very engaging comments here. So for you, I used to use this in my classroom, and I still use in my workshop. So if all of you have heard this idiom about an apple a day keeps the doctor away. So I make it a little twist of it, and I say, and a compliment a day keeps all your woes away. Whether it's your family,
That's
whether it's
nice.
your institution, whether it's your classroom, when you are entering into the classroom, or maybe in your office, pick up someone and give him a very random compliment which you mean genuinely, and see the, it's kind of a domino effect which will happen. And there have been so many documentaries, small viral videos which have been that okay, you help someone and then it, the effect happened with the other. Because you ultimately, we are looking, all of us are looking for that positivity. Okay, negativity is all around, the wars are happening, the pandemic has happened, we have tried our, all of us as a community, our best to do whatever we could do, but then this is what we actually look for. So these are the words which I can talk about in AI. And then yes, when you, it comes to your lesson plan, as I mentioned earlier, try to imbibe the Socrates art of questioning into your lesson plan, and in any of the subjects you can do it, right? And let's say if I am good at vocabulary as a student, so you can pick up, so maybe they can do concept mapping. And concept learning is something which is very, it's kind of it actually encompasses appreciative inquiry a bit. that okay, how we can leverage the strengths of each of the individual and then make them in a group and then let them learn from each other. So this is, I think, Waldorf's way of learning, which is very famous, and there where they don't work on subject, they work on the projects. And this is where, so if I have a strength of a music and somebody has a strength of maths, or somebody has a strength of writing, photography, art, or whichever, and they come together to find the bigger possibility with that. I'm not using problem here, because then of course appreciative inquiry does not have the word problem in it. Okay, it starts from the next step of it. That's where you do. And can you give an example of how we can integrate in lesson planning? I've already given it to you, and maybe we can have another session on lesson planning, how to use appreciative inquiry and constructivism. So that can be one option for all of us. And like lovely comments we are getting on this, that the teachers were talking about mathematics. So I'm a mathematics lover. So yes, love to see that going on. So I hope I have answered your question. And yes, please feel free
Fantastic.
later. Yeah.
Thank you, Chetna. Billy, anything to add to that?
Um, well, lesson planning is almost the same as module designing in certain ways, right?
Hmm.
And one key thing that I mean, as teachers, educators, and even facilitators forget is to be very specific when they write their objectives. We tend to write at the end of this program, at the end of this course, the participant will be able to understand. Remember that, understand. The word understand, if you could actually change that word, make it actionable, something that they can actually do, because understand is something so uh, generic that I also don't know how to understand something. So if you look into, let's say, if you read through, just go to positivepsychology.com. That's where I normally get some of my resources for. It's all about being positive, right? So if you look at the principles of AI, and this is how you can frame your questions. Look at one, there are 5 principles, positive, positive questions that enact positive change, right? So to understand, that can be, I don't know how to do that, right? You have to use words that create words, right? So you have to something that they will actually create. Now, so let's say at the end of this, my students will be able to create, will be able to express, will be able to inquire. So these are all about life. Remember, whatever subject it could be. Like I had a friend. He's a very good math teacher based out of UST. He teaches mathematics through stories, right? And it's very engaging. And he uses actually the use of not just his stories, but the stories of like, let's say, television or sitcoms. I used to teach literature, and I used to I remember in the past I used to watch all the teledramas that the students actually watch and connect it to literature. That's how you need to connect, because that's how AI is all about connections. And like what Chatna said just a couple of few, maybe about 30 minutes ago, it's the interconnectedness or the interconnections. That's what we need to also to develop as we at least as we impart not just knowledge but life skills to our students.
Yeah, I agree completely, Billy. So, ask using words that help the students create, but starting from a point of positivity rather than presenting a problem that needs to be solved, right? So, to the examples already brought up, right? I'm good at math, I'm good at music, I'm good at science. Then what can come out of this, right? So that's a different approach, and applying that, let's say, connecting that, let's say, current events or pop culture to our lesson plans using the language of hope, possibility, dream, and strengths. And that's one way of how we can include appreciative inquiry. You don't have to spell it out explicitly. I guess that's my only suggestion. You kind of weave it into your lesson seamlessly, right? And implicitly. No need to really spell it out as it is. We're just trying to identify the concept and the framework. But you are creative teachers. I'm sure you'll find a way to weave it into your lessons. Okay. Another question here, and this might be a little harder, but I'll give it a shot, and hopefully our panelists can respond. So, positive mindset is easier said than done, though. What do you tell career teachers someone who has been in service for more than a decade, whose general mindset is maybe nothing's going to change. It's all lip service. It's all just pretty words. What are the actionable steps that academic administrators need to take to help build confidence in these career teachers or service teachers?
I'll go ahead since I've unmuted myself. One, it's always when it comes to behavior change. It's always easier said than done, right? But I'd like to. The first thing that came to mind was a movie I saw. I think what way back in the 80s. You could actually search for it. The Power of One, right? The story of a white British child in South Africa during apartheid times, and then he actually wanted to actually pull everybody together, and it not only is because of the power of one, right? Our role as educators, as much as we want everybody to actually change at the same time, nobody changes overnight. However, it takes only one person who practices it and role models the way every day, right? Without fear of being say, well, you're just going to do that today, or maybe tomorrow, or next week, or next month, you'll cycle back to your own ways. To be able to do it consistently every day, and people finding that it actually changes things, and see that one, that we eventually others will follow, right? You don't necessarily have to have, by end of this year, we'll have 100% everybody in the school, all teachers changing their mindset. No, you only require actually and that's actually some of our will I say fallacy, or sometimes our problems that yes, we take care of 40 students in a class, sometimes 50 depending on the school, and we want to cover all of them, change every them. But remember, if you are able only to change one, and I remember a good facilitator who's no longer here with us. Perhaps you've heard of him, Pedro Aguilar, who said in one conference, "My role as an educator is to be able to only influence one soul, because that one soul will influence another. The other soul will influence another, right?" And that's how positive appreciative inquiry actually works. It's how it's passed on from one person to the next, and it becomes uh, uh, part of your work life, part of your way of life, actually.
Wonderfully said. I totally agree. Chetna, anything to add here?
Yeah, I think I can add a little bit more here, because the specific question is about when, as a teacher or as an educator, you're doing the same thing, transacting the same curriculum for years and years with a different set of students, but your methodology doesn't change, your environment doesn't change. So, how do we feel? How do we keep ourselves motivated? I think that's what the core is of what the question was asked from the audience. So yes, what you need to do is a simple thing, to reach out to that person or to ask about that. Okay, how are you feeling today? That's what you should do. Do it every day, and then see that how their vocabulary changes. That's what. Then second thing is finding out what motivates them. There would be sometime I have seen
Mm,
teachers, I've seen educators, those who don't smile in the classroom. It's a very
mm.
basic thing that when you're going into the classroom, so at least smile, you just deliver and you come back out of the class. No, that's not the way. And that's where we have to. So there are questions like how we can do. And there will be a lot of change happening right now also. When from online, we are moving towards the face to face. So, and I've seen students become very awkward about it. That what do we do after, like, because you have been so zombies or zombies about it, that you don't know what to do when you are in the
Mm.
face-to-face interaction. So the motivation is what we need to see, and as Millie mentioned about the behavioral change, so it's a so from your thought it becomes the feeling, and feeling becomes your action. It's the first thing. So if your thought is negative, of course your feeling would be you would be talking about that, your vocabulary would be that, and that's how your action is. So that's what we have to change as a teacher, that what are we going to do today. So if you can write a journal about it, that okay, this is what I'm going to achieve today in my day-to-day work life. And then, of course, so I would give a very simple example, that because as a career teacher or as a career consultant, it's very difficult for subject teachers to understand that, okay, if I'm teaching chemistry, what are the career options for the students in chemistry? You ask any teacher, they would hardly know about it. And when I show them on the chart that, okay, there are 250 careers possibilities, the roles and responsibilities that you can take, that opens their mind. So I'm not trying to demean them. I'm just giving them, starting from the, okay, chemistry is your strength, students connect with you, because all of us, if you would see, go back to your childhood, when Billy said that I could not learn, I don't like mathematics, it could be because of the mathematics teacher. That's where it starts. The whole journey starts at our childhood experiences. So that's what we have to see. And sometimes you have to move up as a coach, as a mentor. You have to go backward with your clients, with your employers, also with your teachers, also as a leader. That's what we should do. That. And I think the one who has asked this question, just try this strategy, and hopefully it will work for you. That you can find your answer. So give them some kind of a good motivation, some kind of like we get those good freebies in the classrooms. So maybe your principals or your leaders can decide about that. Okay, this teacher has worked and this works for them. Those who have been pillars of the institution for 20, 25 years, acknowledging them on a bigger forum, is that's what I think the positivity would be about. Acknowledging that they've been working, as I mentioned earlier, silent workers. They may be doing it day in and day out because of whatever reasons, they have no motivation. But that's where we have to identify, as a leader, appreciative leader, it becomes my responsibility to see that my whole team, whichever, maybe I have a group of 5 people, maybe I have a group of 40 sets of classroom, or maybe I'm managing an organization which has thousands of employees. If as a leader you can see that, that is where the journey of the appreciative inquiry starts. So not naming or not the nomenclature, it's about the essence of it, starting from the behavior of the leader to the behavior of the lowest cadre of whosoever is in the organization structure. That's what I would like to add.
Thank you for that, Chetna. That's really insightful and to the point. I agree with you. Similar to what Billy was saying of we're here to influence one student at a time. Similarly, maybe as administrators or owners of schools, leaders of schools, you're also there to influence one teacher at a time. Maybe if there's a career teacher that is always frowning, maybe just in the public assembly say, this teacher has been with us 30 years and has graduated so many students, and she's done a wonderful job, right? Even and of course it doesn't happen overnight, but just those little acknowledgments every day eventually will lead into something more positive and hopefully more engaging. Okay, great. We've run out of time. Okay, so there's so many questions already. I just want to wrap up a little bit. Just give our speakers today, thank you so much, one last round of your final thoughts to share with our audience before I wrap up the session. So your final thoughts on appreciative inquiry, and the individual to the organization to the broader society. Any thoughts you have, final thoughts on appreciative inquiry, please go ahead. Billy, do you want to go?
Sure. I mean, much has been said about it. In fact, I saw one. I was reading through the comments, and some said, "Teach learners with a heart." Somebody said that. And it's you have to focus when you. Let's go back to what we mean by appreciate. That those two words, right? Appreciate and inquiry. As teachers, we inquire, and students need to learn that skill, right? To inquire and ask the right questions and lead to the right answers, right? And as teachers, we need to be appreciative of those answers, whether correct or incorrect, because even an incorrect answer leads you to a different perspective, right? And that's something we often teach also from an organizational point of view, or corporate point of view. However, all of those things are things that we can also apply. Why wait for them to understand what appreciative thinking is when we can actually do it already in practices within our own let's say school base, or from our students and everything else. ultimately, teaching is really a passion, right? I'm still in the teaching field, except in a corporate setting. It's a passion. Don't lose track of that passion, because that passion is seen, right? And that passion talks about your own skill of AI, right? Of course, with from a technical point of view, AI is also artificial intelligence, right? Just remember that those one is something that is an output of how you are able to apply appreciative inquiry. It's a think of it as a way of life, uh, and that can be applied not just in lesson plans or your students, but can also be applied to yourself, because ultimately, you need to be able to apply your appreciation to yourself first before you can actually appreciate anybody else. I guess that's the last thought I have there. Thank you, Roy.
Fantastic. Thank you, Billy. That's a great idea to leave on. Chetna, please, your final thoughts.
Yeah, so I'll pick up from the Billy statement that start from yourself. That would be the way. And just quoting here about the Peter Drucker, because he's mentioned in the New Society, this book, the task of leadership is to create an alignment of strengths, making a system's weakness irrelevant. So we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. The only thing what we need is to, if we start on the positive note, if we know that okay, this is my strength, so maybe I am very punctual. A simple thing, I am very punctual, so I can do that. Now, this particular positive thought, the core element of our being, is can take you places around the world, whether it's climate change, whether it's carbon footprint, whether it's sustainability, change management into the organizations, and from individual to community to institutions and organizations and countries. That is what we have to learn from this. So AI is just a thought process. It's a way, as he said, is a way of life for all of us, and it has to become a habit for all of us. Not that we do it today in a webinar and then we forget about it. At least pick up those 5 words which are collaborative, co-creation, designing, dreaming, limitless, possibilities. Pick up those words and put them into your day-to-day work life, and whichever way, whether you're working with your family, whether you're working with your institution, whether you're working in a NGO, or whichever way, that's what you have to do. So from my side, appreciative inquiry is, yes, you all have been wonderful audience, and so each of you will have a compliment for you, Roy and Billy. That's what I think we can start with appreciative inquiry, is that so start asking questions, and the intended questions and the right questions. That's what I would sum up my
Thank,
thoughts.
thank you, Chetna. That was fantastic. Billy, thank you so much. On behalf of Akadasia, we're very proud to have you as to join us our panelists today. We learned so much. The audience, thank you, audience. This is one of the most active audiences we've had recently. Thank you so much for all your positivity and all your comments and sharings. We'll wrap up the session now, but before we go, you have a lot of questions, I think. So some of you are asking in the audience, how do I get my certificate or attendance link or what have you? So it's very easy. I'm going to share my screen. Dear panelists, if you'll indulge me, I just have to do some housekeeping before we wrap up. So I'll share my screen really quickly. Okay, so if we go to the Acadasia website, again, if you have not yet signed up, create your account. If you already have an existing account and you're not able to sign in, make sure to reset your password, because we moved to a new system. You need to reset your password so that you can get your account again. If you have any problems at this step, please email us at support@acadasia.com. We'll be more than happy to help you sign in. If you don't have an account yet, please sign up. Make sure to select the teacher option. We only ask very few things. And then once you log in, you'll be asked to choose a membership plan. The Appreciative Inquiry course on Acadasia is part of our free courses. Okay, so we have courses that we are available for free. Some are paid courses. Fortunately, the Appreciative Inquiry course is free. So in the membership section, just select the free account. But if you would like to access the full features of Acadasia, including our Collab Ed, Design Ed, and Skill Ed features, these are the prices. Please subscribe. Again, very affordable. Our cheapest plan, Silver, is not even 4 Starbucks coffees a year, and you'll get so much value from the webinars and the courses. Once you're able to log in, Okay, make sure in your profile, please add your picture. We want to see your face. Okay, so please complete your profile information so that you will have full access to the system, including which school you are from. So make sure to select all the asterisk items and fill up your account. Then once your profile has been set, go to Skilled and then search for the course Appreciative Inquiry. So if you type here, we have a bunch of courses here, free courses for you to take. Search for Appreciative, and you will have Appreciative Inquiry in Vietnamese, in Indonesian, Bahasa Indonesia, and of course in English. If you speak English more fluently, please choose the Appreciative Inquiry course in English and enroll. Once you get into the course, you'll see several lessons. Again, it's a very easy system to use. Just enroll into the system, go through the course materials. Make sure that at each step you click topic complete and then next as you go on. And then towards the end, once you're able to complete all the topics in that course for Appreciative Inquiry, then you will earn your certificate at the end, which will be emailed to you, completing the course Appreciative Inquiry, which is composed of this webinar we have today, as well as the free course that you will have on Akadasia. Okay, so that is how you will get your certificates for this program. Make sure to create your Akadasia account, sign up, and complete the course. It's very easy. It's only a couple of hours to finish, and then you will get your certificate of completion. All right, so that's it for me. And again, on behalf of Billy and Dr. Chetna, thank you so much. It was a pleasure seeing everybody. Don't forget, oh my God, I forgot to mention to you, next week we have our Akadasia Teacher Spaces. So that is our free flowing forum. If you would like to talk about anything regarding education and your experience on Akadasia, we invite all teachers to come join us. Akadasia Teacher Spaces, that's next Wednesday. It'll be hosted by myself and one of our community executives, Richard, exclusive on Zoom. Okay, so we will share a link with you. Check your emails or check the chat right now. If you would like to sign up for Akadasia Teacher Spaces, we have this every other Wednesday. So instead of having a webinar Wednesday every week, we will alternate. So next Wednesday, we'll have Akadasia Teacher Spaces. Please come join us. We'll just chit chat and say hi, hello. And then next week, the week after that, we'll have another webinar Wednesday. All right. So that's it for me. On behalf of Billy and Dr. Chetna, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Fantastic session, Appreciative Inquiry. See you all next time. Bye-bye. Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you.